Welcome to the Power of Now What, Series 2, Still Now. In this series, I'm sharing the various spiritual practices and meditative principles that helped me to recover from my own anxiety, depression, addiction, and obesity. I'm going to be exploring how these profound and ancient teachings are actually more relevant now than ever. As in the modern world, there is much psychological suffering, such as anxiety, depression, feelings of loneliness, isolation, problems with self-image, such as low self-worth, low self-esteem, poor self-confidence. Many people even struggling with identity itself. It's as though identity itself is being called into question. Many people also find themselves lacking a sense of meaning or purpose in life. It seems as though we don't have a kind of centralized system of philosophy or religion or spirituality that unifies people into a central sense of meaning or purpose. It feels as though of late that has become somewhat vague, and it's as though science has tried to kind of fill that void, fill that gap. That's what we kind of turn to, as science is kind of the backdrop by which we're explaining reality itself currently. And so we're also trying to turn to science to explain or answer the questions relating to meaning and purpose as well. And science seems to be falling a little flat there, or having mixed results on that one, so to speak. And then we get into the realm of philosophy and things of that nature. So I find it very interesting that it can come as quite a surprise that although we consider these modern problems, the reality is that they've actually been going on since the dawn of humanity. All of those problems just mentioned, we've actually been suffering from them forever. And although things have been different in the past, and the technology, and in particular the communication technology, has been varied and different, whenever I read through ancient texts relating to finding inner peace and these spiritual disciplines and meditative practices and religious traditions, they all talk about exactly the same thing. There are so many instances of people talking about their anxiety, their depression, their crisis of faith, in which they're struggling to find meaning or purpose, and how to reconcile the suffering they experience doesn't seem fair, and this is causing them to fall into despair. And feelings of isolation and loneliness, not really understanding how to relate to people, and people then, because of that, struggling with finding their place and purpose in this world. This has been going on since the dawn of time. It's not been caused by the modern world, but is inherent to the human condition itself. And to my mind, because these issues have been noted and studied so intensively and given so much energy, time, and resources by some of the wisest beings that have ever walked this earth, it stands to reason that we could look to those teachings, we could look to these practices and principles as a tool for just seeing what's gone before. And although, because one of the issues, I guess, is that because if we believe that our mental and emotional well-being problems are caused by the modern world, we're going to look for modern solutions. But if we actually look to what has gone before, there's thousands and thousands of years of thinking and work and practice and discipline that has gone into this very subject, emotional and mental well-being, and has actually been resolved in so many cases where people have found inner peace. Throughout history, people have turned to meditative and contemplative practices. We could even say, in some cases, that might take the form of prayer. In other cases, it might take the form of meditation. People have just sought relief from their inner turmoil, their inner chaos, and sought out wisdom that will help them to find solace, that will help them to find and ground in a sense of peace, a sense of tranquility, and a sense of serenity, a way of reconciling their own existence. This has happened throughout all of human history, and we are fortunate enough now to be in a position where we can access these teachings so readily. They're so readily available. Not only can we access them for free online, we can also find there are people who are speaking on this and teaching it for free on platforms like YouTube and things like that. So it's a profound opportunity. The modern world is a profound opportunity. The technology we have shouldn't be something that is causing us to suffer, but could be used. If we use it wisely and we engage with the right materials and resources, we can squeeze the juice out of everything that has come before. It is not only now possible to access these incredibly wise and powerful teachings, but we can even access the teachers who are explaining it in a way that we can engage with. And I guess I hope to be one of those teachers, for a better word. But yeah. So I've actually got some examples of what I'm talking about right here, because I always do this little preamble, and I often think, I really should do some examples of this, so that people know what I'm babbling on about. But so I wanted to just start introducing a few examples of what I mean about this phenomena. And in this one, I'm actually going to focus on Zen poems. Zen poems are very close to my heart. They are some of the most profound little pointings that often, if I'm in a state, I'm still kind of in a state of worry or a period of uncertainty, I feel like I'm losing my way with my meditative discipline, I just return to this little book that I bought. I only ever bought one book of Zen poems. This is the Everyman's Library Pocket Poets that I bought one time, and it's got everything I need in there. This is a collection of some of the most profoundly liberating works of poetry that I've ever come across. Zen poems in themselves, a lot of people just think of haikus as like this Japanese Zen poetry, but actually a Zen poem isn't necessarily a haiku, even though a haiku could be a Zen poem. A Zen poem itself is generally characterized by being quite short, being very succinct in its wording. There's no unnecessary words in there. Although it's very vivid and evocative, there's not a lot of flowery words and descriptions. It's just very direct, very, very pure, very, very clean writing. And it often points to the beautiful objects in nature, and just often has a way of just describing something in nature that just, you'll know it when it's a way of vocalizing and putting into words that moment when you just look up and see the full moon in the sky, and it's a surprise. You weren't expecting to see the full moon tonight, and there it is, shining brightly. Or you're just driving along and you turn a corner and come over a hill, and there's just a breathtaking sunset, and you weren't expecting it, but it's just that brief moment of whoa, that profound feeling of just peace, and just a tranquility washes over you. That is the power of a Zen poem. It's a way of, in words, just transmitting that exact sentiment, that wordless, impossible to describe moment of just an existential serenity. So I wanted to just give a few examples. I've got the book right here, so I've got my little textbook here, right? And what we're going to do, I'm going to read out a few examples of my favorite ones that you would consider to be like the classic Zen poem, essentially. These are the ones that conjure up the image of the Zen master in their mountain hut who just lives a life in an enlightened state amongst nature, feeling peace just among the natural surroundings. Let's see. So this first one here is by Kokan Shiren, and it's called Summer Night. To escape the heat, I sleep upstairs, where a slight cool grows in the night. A frog's croak echoes in a stone basin. Moonlight casts patterns through bamboo blinds. I accept every sound and sight that's offered. The more detached, the more I hear and see. A time of night I am so truly still. I no longer notice the mosquitoes buzzing round my ears. It just gives such a powerful sense of the tranquility and peace of one who has achieved a level of inner serenity. And it just conjures, for me, I just think, imagine that lifestyle, imagine living like that. And when I first came across these poems, obviously I thought, I'd love to live like that. And it gives me something to, I guess, aspire towards. Because I think that sort of a life really appeals to me. Just simple, pure, and peaceful. This next one is called Passing Over Dayu Peak. In a moment, all my defilements have vanished, leaving both body and soul transparently pure. So vast it is here between heaven and earth, that even alone all is well with me. Today, as I travel along the mountain peaks, self and world are once and for all forgotten. The winds of the immortals seem to caress my head, as, tying up my hair, I receive their secrets. You see that and just in particular, it's just interesting. I wasn't going to do a sort of analysis of any of these poems, but just to point out some of the bits that really kind of piqued my interest when I first came across this sort of writing, is that we can understand, like, just walking along mountain peaks, how peaceful and serene that is. But when I come across lines such as self and world are once and for all forgotten, when I first came across lines like that, I thought, really? What? Like, what do you mean self and world are forgotten? That's like, how does that sounds terrifying. That's scary, isn't it? Why would that result in peace? Anyway, and that line of inquiry led to some really profound moments, to be honest. Let's just grab the next one here. Oh, this is one of my absolute favourites. Okay, this one is, I return to this. This page is actually all it's all dog-eared because I've read this one so many times. It's only 3 lines long. This one, and it actually, this particular poem struck me like a koan. So a Zen koan, Koan, is one of those Zen riddles that kind of is designed to baffle and sort of cause a lot of inner contemplation in the student. So a classic example of a Zen koan is, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Or, if a tree falls in the woods and nobody is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Those are the classic Zen koans. And this one is a Zen poem, but it struck me like a koan. Okay, so I'll read it now. This is by Kaigen Dogen. Coming, going, the waterfowl leaves not a trace, nor does it need a guide. That's one that I've pondered often. I've just got 2 more from these classic examples that I'm going to read out here. And what I'm going to do, I'll explain why I'm reading these in a moment. I mean, they're quite nice to just kind of chill out and, hang out and read anyway. I'm quite enjoying this. So. Thanks for bearing with me. Let's just sit and have a cozy read of some Zen poems here. But I'll explain why after the next two. I'll explain why. So this is one of my absolute favourite writers. This is Han Shan, who was a favourite Zen poet amongst the people as well. He was very popular in his time. Clambering up the cold mountain path. The cold mountain trail goes on and on. The long gorge choked with scree and boulders. The wide creek, the mist-blurred grass. The moss is slippery, though there's been no rain. The pine sings, but there's no wind. Who can leap the world's ties and sit with me among the white clouds? Han Shan just has a way of just capturing that feeling perfectly. And another one from Han Shan here. When the men of the world look for this path amid the clouds, it vanishes, with not a trace where it lay. The high peaks have many precipices. On the widest gullies hardly a gleam falls. Green walls close behind and before. White clouds gather east and west. Do you want to know where the cloud path lies? The cloud path leads from sky to sky. Beautiful. So you get a sense there of what a Zen poem is, what characterizes a Zen poem, and you may have got a sense of the feeling that a Zen poem is trying to evoke in the individual. All well and good so far, so this is very interesting stuff. And we can say, well, all right, yeah, I understand a Zen master obviously is at a great deal of peace, but this does kind of put us in the problem that I was initially speaking about, in which we fall then into the trap of saying, but that's them, isn't it? Right? Like, it would be lovely to be able to go and sit amongst these amazing mountains that they speak about and live in a bamboo hut and just be at peace amongst nature. Because surely it's easy for them, because they don't have the modern problems that we have. It's not like they have phones or social media. They don't have busy 9-to-5 jobs. They don't seem as though they have families they take care of. They don't have all the stresses and strains that we suffer in the modern world. So often that tends to be when we look back and feel the peace of those poems, we think, well, that's them. And although it's nice to read, I can't achieve that level of peace, surely, because my situation's different. Right? That's fair kind of thing to contemplate. Absolutely. This, if we're just honest with ourselves, we've all felt that kind of sentiment, and it's worth contemplating that. The thing is, and here is what I'm trying to get to, is that it is to not assume that their life in the mountains was without troubles and problems. They may not have had the same problems we have, but they have all exactly the same problems. And that idea, or this line of inquiry that I started to contemplate, I came across when I read this Zen poem. This is the first time I read a Zen poem that surprised me. I was like, hang on, this isn't what I was expecting from a Zen poem. And this is by Han Shan again, who was just speaking about Cold Mountain. So, this is, yes, Han Shan. It's untitled, this poem. I'll read it now. Why am I always so depressed? Man's life is like the morning mushroom. Who can bear in a few dozen years to see friends, old and new, all gone away? Thinking of this, I am filled with sadness, a sadness I can hardly endure. What shall I do? Say, what shall I do? Take this old body home and hide it in the mountains. I was surprised when I read that, because it sounded to me like somebody complaining about their sadness and their depression. And I just wasn't expecting that from a Zen monk at all, but from Han Shan, who was just writing those blissfully serene, peaceful poems. I thought, well, hang on, aren't they always that serene and peaceful? Aren't they just relentless? I assumed they didn't suffer things like sadness. And what he's describing there, to see new friends, old and new, all gone away, and being sad about this, that's a loneliness, an existential loneliness, an existential sadness. And at first, I kind of felt a bit sad about this, because I thought, oh man, really? Like, I thought these people had achieved a level of enlightenment in which they never had to feel sad again. But then ultimately I arrived at, oh, I see what's being pointed to here. They are at peace despite the sadness. That's the key. So these enlightened Zen monks, it's not that they never feel sad, it's not that they never feel lonely, it's not that they never feel depressed or anxious, it's not that they never grieve, it's none of those things. Instead, it's that despite those very human conditions, they have still transcended and found a profound, deep level of inner peace that goes beyond all of those states of mind. I'm going to read two more that, to me, highlight just how human these people were, and it goes to laying out a pathway for us, because it shows us that these are human beings with human problems, but they still transcended their suffering. And that should be very heartening for us and very encouraging for us, because we shouldn't exclude ourselves from the possibility of finding inner peace just because we live in the modern world. Whenever I hear people talk about it, it makes me tighten up, and I just think, not this again. Because as we're seeing here, we should not exclude ourselves from the possibility of finding peace, health, and happiness just because of the circumstance and the situation that we're in. It has been demonstrated time and time again that people overcome their situation and circumstance, they overcome their mental and emotional turmoil, and they find inner peace through, in this example, through Zen meditation and through meditative practice. But there are other examples that's why I'm doing this series, to kind of just draw some attention towards these things. So this one is by Betsugen Enshi. I am so sorry I'm butchering these names. I obviously can't speak Japanese. I'm probably absolutely bungling those pronunciations like crazy. So, Betsugen Enshi, and this one is called Miscellaneous Poems from My Lair. It's a collection of 5 poems. I'll read them now. They brought a smile to my face, and remember that this individual is writing from a space of enlightened inner peace. Old rat, as usual, stealing oil from my lamp. With squeaking screeches leaps about, poking holes in the walls. And as usual, I grab the broom and hurl it through the dark. If I ever hit him, they can put down one more rat soul for the western heaven. Dream of rivers and lakes broken, I sit at midnight in the meditation hall. From empty steps come the steady sounds of long summer rains. Blink, blonk. The temple roof leaks everywhere, and every drop stabs clear into my guts. By now, I'd be the old dragon rock of Mount Lu, white-bearded, grizzle-haired, stern-visaged. But the temple gate wasn't firmly locked, and someone's come to pass the time chit-chatting. Yak-to-yak. The textbook's inane. Can't you see that? Stupid business, this facing a wall. I'm worn out from the effort. I make a deep basket of my sleeves, keep my tongue to myself. When I open my mouth, it'll be at mealtime. A myriad trees sway in the wind. Yellow leaves flutter down. The cold colour of mountains all around. I don't open my gate. Someone once planted these cedars in the garden, just to keep half a day's sunshine from these thatched eaves. Isn't that somewhat heartening and encouraging? To think of a Zen monk who has gone absolutely out of his way to escape from the world, to go and live in a temple, to get far away, in order to focus and find inner peace, has devoted an entire life. And also there is cultural and societal support for this in ancient Japan. There is a religious system, a cultural system in place to support this. So this is a monk not only who has devoted his life to finding inner peace and has all the support, still finds that when he sat to meditate, it's a shame somebody didn't shut the temple gate, it wasn't firmly locked, and someone comes to try and pass the time chit-chatting, right? Doesn't that just say it all? So for me, what this points towards is that if you're sat in meditation, you're trying to find some peace of mind, you're trying to finally get some time to yourself, find a little bit of quiet, find a little bit of space, and then obviously you get messages through on your phone, you get emails, you get people knocking on your door, you get the phone ringing, you get roadworks outside or anything like that. Don't fall into the trap of saying, if only it wasn't for this modern world, I would be able to find enlightenment. Because that's exactly what this monk is saying right now. He's saying, by now I'd be the old dragon rock of Mount Lu. He's trying to, by saying that, what he is saying is that by now I would be at peace, I would be enlightened if it wasn't for these people constantly chattering around me. It's the same problem. It's the same problem. And I highlight those things as it should be something that encourages you, not something that discourages you. It should be something that just recognizing the challenge has always been the same, and there is no reason why you can't find the same level of total inner serenity, total inner zen. Because anyone who ever found peace didn't get there immediately, and they most likely didn't have a flawless run of things. Their peace will have been disturbed. There will have been so many times that on the path to enlightenment, the path to Satori, the path to finding a profound and undisturbable inner tranquility and serenity, they will have encountered all of exactly the same problems that you're going to find. And it's a beautiful journey. It's a beautiful journey. And something I would suggest is, if you do struggle with your kind of mental and emotional well-being, is start to look towards, if you start to frame it in a slightly different way, so see it as part of your meditative practice, see it as a difficulty and a challenge to overcome, an existential problem that every human being faces. You just have a unique individual expression, because every human being has a unique individual expression, and just coming to see this as part of the journey and the path to inner peace. Don't think of it as a sickness or an illness, and that there's something wrong with you, and that you're you're just doomed and you're just going to need to fall into despair. Don't see it like that. See this as a profound, deep, spiritual struggle. As all of these, I mean, this book is filled with examples of that. And there are many examples like it. So that, as a background, is a good platform to begin speaking about the topic today, which is Advaita, a Sanskrit word that means non-dual. A meaning non, and Dvaita meaning dual or two. So Advaita together means not two. Now, the translation of Advaita to English is most commonly this non-dual or non-duality. But the very first thing that I want to say is that there is some discussion around whether this is an accurate translation. There is another suggested translation, which is non-separate, and Dvaita would be better translated to mean separateness or separation. And so, generally speaking, although I tend to say non-duality because that's just how most people understand it, the term non-separate, I would suggest, personally, is more accurate and actually helps us to gain a deeper understanding much quicker than if we use the term non-dual. So I tend to use the translation non-separate when I'm doing my own meditations and contemplations. I think it's more accurate, and I think it gives a deeper understanding, a deeper realization much quicker than the translation non-dual. I'll explain what the terms mean in a moment. Before I do, if you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Sorry to ask, but it really does make a remarkable difference in helping me to grow the channel. If you're watching on listening on Spotify, probably not watching on Spotify. If you're listening on Spotify, why not go check out my YouTube channel? I have tons of videos, guided meditations, talks on spiritual topics, spiritual practices, spiritual principles, as well as advice on overcoming addiction and just general mental, emotional, and physical well-being advice. So if you listen on Spotify, why not go check out my YouTube? I'm also available now on Insight Timer, which is a free app, the most popular meditation app in the world. And my guided meditations, I've been recording exclusive ones, putting it on Insight Timer. If you have Insight Timer, go check me out. It's just the name Corin Bryant. And if you are into meditation, you are sincere and serious about finding inner peace, why not download the app and go and check it out. I'm not working on commission, by the way. Sorry, I just realised that sounded like quite a slick bit of product placement. It's not product placement. That's just because I've I've branched out into Insight Timer, so I'm trying to get followers basically, but I'm not trying to sell the app. Wow, I've gone off on a tangent here. Right, sorry. Let me get back on track real quick. Wow. Okay. Today's topic is Advaita, and I just explained there are two slightly different translations for Advaita. As always with these podcasts, I'll continually try to bring this back to how this philosophy, how this principle, how this practice will alleviate our struggles and our troubles with mental and emotional health. So this one in particular, I have found the most beneficial, the most helpful when it comes to finding meaning and purpose and resolving the existential questions. So these are very deep questions, very philosophical questions, the ones around why am I here? What is the nature of reality? What is existence? What about the existence of God? What about the existence of a soul? Like all of these very deep metaphysical questions I have found were answered through the contemplation and study of Advaita philosophy. So I'd highly recommend checking Advaita out. I believe there's so many strengths to Advaita, but one of the main ones is its accessibility. It's accessible. It's essentially, it does come from Hinduism, so that's where it has its roots. And so if you're studying it, there is a lot of kind of Hindu terminology that gets used, but it has been spoken about so much in so many different ways that it is accessible. The philosophy itself is not religious, and that's one of the key things I think that makes it so accessible to absolutely everyone. You could incorporate elements of Advaita into any system that you currently have to explain the world and your way of navigating the world, your way of understanding the world. Whatever your current model of reality is, whether it's scientific or religious or spiritual or metaphysical, whatever the model of reality you currently have in the mind, it is possible to take elements of Advaita and it will deepen your understanding. It will deepen your connection to the universe, ultimately. And I believe that there is a kind of a surge in interest in Advaita recently. And I believe, particularly in the West, and I believe because Advaita, it can be explained in very scientific terminology, very Western terms. We have a very, the West, generally, the Western way of thinking is very objective and very empirical. And we like, even our language is filled with nouns, which are like objects and things acting on those nouns, like our verbs and adjectives and things. So we like to categorize and divide and everything. And it's led to a very kind of scientific way of looking at things. And studying Advaita philosophy, I found, because that was my background, I came from a very empirical and scientific reasoning way of perceiving reality and perceiving the world. I explained all of human behavior through evolutionary biology and explained the existence of the universe purely through physics. That was my model of reality, how I was understanding myself and the world. It was purely through biology and physical reality, the scientific method. And when I was studying Advaita, I found, hang on a minute, this is a spiritual tradition. This is clothed in so much Hindu mythology and terminology, and yet when I got to the juice of exactly what was being described, I realised this does not go against the scientific method at all. This is a purely scientific discipline. This is a purely rational and reasonable way of looking at the universe. There is nothing in Advaita that is unreasonable. That is where I think the accessibility and the power of this comes from. It is pure logic. It is a step-by-step just recognizing that it's actually the mind that can be irrational and illogical. But if you just become very aware of reality itself and turn the mind off, just get the mind out of the whole business, right? We're not interested in the mind. You turn the mind off. You then see reality very clearly. And through some step-by-step approaches to just seeing reality clearly, we arrive at the most profound, most incredible existential truths that totally resolve any questions that you had relating to existence, why we're here, why the universe is here, what is the nature of reality. All of the big questions are answered purely through this. It's referred to as a philosophy, but I don't even know what you'd call it. We often find this problem in spiritual when we're using spiritual terms and things. It defies explanation, but philosophy is probably a good way of the search for truth. So philosophy is probably the best word that fits. Anyway, let's actually do it. How about that? How does that sound? let's actually do a little Advaita exploration right here, and that's how I'm going to frame the rest of this talk here today, is we're actually going to do some contemplation, some introspection, and I'm not going to talk about the history of Advaita or what it means for you or anything like that. Instead, we're actually going to come to a direct experience here today. I'm going to try and not use as much spiritual language and jargon as I possibly can. I'm going to try and use the language that is the most accessible to the most people, whether you are scientifically minded, religious, spiritual, whatever it is. Whatever your model of reality is, we're going to do a step-by-step self-inquiry, an inquiry into the nature of being. To begin, I'll ask you, do you feel like you are separate from the universe? This is a powerful question in itself. Even if nothing else, you just followed this question to its conclusion, you would have you'd have a PhD in Advaita eventually. Just that one question in itself. Do you feel separate from the universe? Really follow this. And you might have formulated that in just a simple yes or no, so we need to just kind of deepen this exploration, deepen this contemplative meditation here. How do you feel you relate to the universe? And we could give some examples of some people feeling like they kind of operate a body in relation to an external world. They feel like they're a kind of pilot that lives in the brain, that operates a body that kind of navigates around the world. Most people generally feel like there's an internal and an external, like there's a separate me, there's a my body, and I have to move and make decisions and act in relation to an external environment. It's just common ways of looking at it. Do you feel like you're kind of, you feel like you are a part of the universe, but you just feel like a tiny, insignificant, almost, there's a lot of people, quite sadly, who just feel like they're sort of here by accident. Like it's just kind of a mistake. Like a kind of, it's almost like just by sheer chance, the human brain happened to evolve consciousness, and now we're stuck in a right pickle. I, a stranger and afraid in a world I never made. Something like that. You feel small, insignificant in the universe, in the world. Do you feel like you're outside of the universe? Do you feel like you're not part of the fabric of this universe? You feel somehow unnatural. You feel estranged. You don't feel like a natural creature. You look at the animals and say they are parts of nature, but then you look at yourself and you say, but I am not part of nature. I am in this weird special category called human being, and that weird special category is artificial in some respect. You feel as though humanity has distanced itself from the root and ground of being, as though humanity has somehow separated itself from nature and now exists outside of the natural order of things. These are common ways that people perceive themselves, the world, and humanity as a whole. So this is a good first question, just to see where you're starting here. We have to know where we're starting in order to get moving in the right direction, right? Which way is north from here, as the old joke says. So, where are we starting here? Are you separate from the universe? If you feel in some way you are separate from the universe, outside of the natural order of things, I'll ask the follow-up question, how on earth could that be the case? How? How is that possible? How could you possibly be outside of the universe? That is simply not scientifically possible. It is not possible in reality. The one thing we know for certain is that you exist in the universe. There's a clumsy way of saying it, because what we're going to get to eventually, spoiler alert, is that you exist as the universe. Not just in it, not just a part of it, but you are it. I've just shot straight to the conclusion right there, but bear with me and I'll backtrack. Sorry. You know, sometimes I get in too good a mood to function. That's where I'm at right now. Okay. How can you be separate from the universe? How can you be outside of it? You can't. Now, naturally, the mind wants to jump to, oh, so what does that mean? So what is the nature of all of this? What's the fabric of reality? What are my particles made of? What are my string theory made of? And we like to go to all those kinds of areas, trying to create a model of reality that can incorporate a new way of looking at things. But I'd suggest here, don't try and create a model of reality at all now. This is all the activity of the mind, and it's the mind that creates the separation. So let's not go to that. Instead, just recognize the truth. Don't go to the mind. The mind will confuse and obfuscate, and you'll go all off on crazy tangents that could last for decades, right? People study all kinds of philosophy and just get further and further away from the truth. No amount of studying ever brought anyone closer to the truth. The truth is something realized by really facing up to some very simple, hard realities. That's how you arrive at truth. Is to face the pain of reality. It's not to go off in the mind and try to comfort yourself with some kind of cognitive understanding. No amount of cognitive understanding ever brought anyone to peace, ever. Can't be done. By its own nature, it can't be done. The mind is chaos. The mind is turmoil. It will never find a satisfactory conclusion. It will never find a satisfactory model of reality. Why? Because reality doesn't work like that. Reality just is. It doesn't need the mind. Reality never needed a model. It never asked to be understood. The universe never came to you and said, please figure me out. It doesn't need that. It never has wanted it at all. Just let that go. Let go. And instead, just being for a moment. Recognize that there is nothing that divides or separates you from this supposedly external world that you can perceive through your senses. And we'll continue with the exploration here with some more questions. Where is the dividing line? What divides you from the external world? Where is the separation? We are determined to create separation in our minds. We're determined to divide and categorize everything up. Okay, so let's try and find it. Where's the dividing line? Where does your being end and the universe begin? At which point? At which point does the you that you have been defining yourself as, if you've been walking around kind of defining this outline, maybe you're currently thinking, well, it ends at my skin or something along those lines. You're thinking it ends with my senses or my mind or my body or something along those lines, right? So where we have been defining an outline for what we consider to be ourselves, let's actually look for it. Where's the edge? Where is the edge of what you consider you, so that you end at a certain point and the universe begins? Outside of your field of vision. But then, if we're saying outside of the field of vision, we're saying, well then, is the universe then not within your field of vision? How is your field of vision separate from the rest of the universe? Just because you cannot see further from that, it doesn't mean that the field of vision is something different to what is. It's just an appearance within what is. And what about this idea, well, okay, I guess my body ends kind of where my skin is. There's like a physical organism here. So is the physical organism that you are not words are a struggle with this one in particular, but is the body that you are not the universe? That's probably the best way to kind of phrase that. Is the body that you are not made of the same stuff as the universe? Whatever that stuff is. Don't worry about what it is, but how can it be is the point. How can it be? It can't be. There is no possible way that you could be not the same thing as the rest of the universe. It's all happening now. It's all happening. It's an unfolding that is just happening. So herein is the exploration, really, of non-duality or non-separation. There is no dividing line. No dividing line. So, how to experience this as a real felt experience that will then result in a deeper sense of inner peace. Recognize first that this idea of separation, this idea of division, that you are a separate individual somehow outside of the natural order of things, is a product of the mind. The mind, by its own nature, needs to categorize and divide everything up. It likes to name things, it likes to label things, it likes to create concepts and frameworks of understanding, and the mind is the mind. It needs to think, and in order to do so, it needs to separate things up, ascribe words, values, quantities. It wants to qualify and quantify everything, and that's how it operates. And in doing so, it applies that very same activity to itself. The mind puts itself apart from the universe, because the mind is a divider. The mind is a separator. The mind categorizes things. The mind likes to make a noun out of something. It sees an object, such as, I don't know, a chair, sees a chair and goes, right, that chair is a separate object. That chair is separate from the things around it. I can understand what a chair is by defining a chair as something separate from the things around it. I know what it is because I know what it's not. That's how the mind understands the world. And the mind, being naturally very clever, does the same thing to itself. It categorized itself, it divided itself, it said, I am a separate thing. Why did it do this? Because that's what it does. That's what it does. So let's not make an enemy of the mind. The mind is not an adversary. The mind is simply doing what the mind does. This is how it operates. That's its own nature. To illustrate that, actually, I don't know why this just came to mind, but I'm going to use a fable. It's one of Aesop's fables. It's a very powerful one. If you get it, it'll tell you about the benign nature of all things, even when they appear to be malevolent. There is a frog that is about to swim across a stream. And as it's preparing to swim across the stream, it's approached by a scorpion. And the scorpion says, I need to get across the stream, but I can't swim. Can I jump onto your back? And when you swim across, you can carry me across. I'll be very grateful. And the frog says, why on earth would I do that? You're a scorpion. Like, how do I know you won't sting me? And the scorpion says to the frog, but that's ridiculous. if I sting you, if I jump on your back and I sting you whilst you're swimming across the stream, then I'll drown as well. And the frog ponders this and sees the logic in this and says, yeah, absolutely, of course. Like, why would the scorpion sting me when if I'm doing the scorpion a favour, and if the scorpion stings me, then the scorpion's going to drown as well. So it's like, yeah, the scorpion wouldn't do that. So the frog goes, okay, I see the logic, I see the sense in that. Jump on my back and we'll swim across. Scorpion jumps on the frog's back and the frog begins to swim across. Halfway across, swimming this stream, the frog feels a sting in its back. He looks up to find that the scorpion has stung him, and the venom is beginning to pour through his veins, and he's beginning to feel himself stiffen up, tighten up, and they're about to both go under. And with his last words, the frog says, "Why did you sting me? Now we'll both drown." And the scorpion says, "Because I'm a scorpion." That tells us about the fundamental nature of things, and the mind is exactly like that. It cannot help its own nature. Its own activity is its own nature. It is what it does, and what it does is divide, categorize, separate, tries to create cognitive understanding. That's what it does, and it did this to itself. It didn't realize, so just like the scorpion stinging the frog, it didn't realize that it was stitching itself up by doing that. Or maybe it does know that it's doing that, but it can't help it. It can't help but do that. But this answers the question of why do we feel separate in the first place? Why do we feel outside of the universe? Why do we feel like we're separate objects moving around in these terrified, temporary, finite body and minds that are subject to the limitations and vulnerabilities of a single body and mind? That's because the mind has done what the mind does by its own very nature. It creates a framework, and because of the mind's insistence on the truth, the reality of time, which it created, by the way. There's no such thing as time. Because it created its own concept of time, it then begins to fear its own demise. So we walk around with this fear of death, this fear of mortality, due to the mind's own creation, the mind's own imagination. It's imagined something into existence and then is terrified of it, like a nightmare. But if we look deeper, we look clearer, we see there's no such thing as time. This is something the mind created. The mind measures things, and this is crucial. This isn't something to just go, oh, that's cool. This is an interesting thing to talk about during parties. No. This is fundamental. This is fundamental to your happiness. This is fundamental to your peace. So much of our psychological suffering is bound to time. We worry about the future. Think of all the psychological suffering that you endure due to this belief that there is a thing called a future. Think of all that suffering. All of the worry, all of the imagination, all of the trying to predict everything, trying to plan for the most optimal future imaginable. All that psychological suffering is due to this belief in time. And what about this thing called the past? We're afraid of our memories of the past. We have to analyze and ruminate on our past. And we remember negative periods of time in the past. We don't want to return to those. It's a myth. There's no such thing as the past. Which isn't to say that you haven't had previous experiences. You have had previous experiences. Not invalidating previous experiences, but instead, let's just recognize that you can't return to the past now. You can't go back to the past. It's done. It's over. In many ways, it just lives on in the body, but even that is happening in the present. And there's ways of working through that if we have suffered from particularly negative experiences, which most of us have. We've lived our entire lives under the belief that we're temporary, finite, mortal bodies. So naturally, we're all a little bit fried. We're all a bit cooked from that. But anyway, the point is, the mind is what creates the measurement. The mind is not noticing time and then seeks to understand it. The mind creates time and then and then tries to reaffirm it, and then tries to validate its own false belief. And the same thing with space. We like to measure distance. We like to measure height and width and weight and all of those sorts of things. But we forget that the measurement is not reality. In exactly the same way that a tree is not made out of meters, a tree is made out of tree. Okay, a tree is made out of tree. It's not made out of meters. We know this. But because of the way the mind measures the universe, what it can perceive around it, we start to mistake. We mistake the measurement for reality, but it's not reality itself. Just as a tree is not made of meters, life is not made of years. But you think of your life in terms of years. You think of your life in terms of time. No wonder it's so unsatisfying. No wonder we have no meaning or purpose, because we are perceiving our fundamental nature based on a faulty premise. Faulty. It's got nothing to do with time. Nothing to do with it. It's not even got anything to do with the mind. But this is why so many spiritual practices and meditative principles are about disengaging from the mind. We have to recognize the mind is a liar. That we have promoted the mind way above its station. That is the real problem here. We're looking for the mind to solve all of life's problems, and we seem to be completely blind to the fact that the mind is creating 99% of the problems. The mind is creating the problems. It's not solving them. So, let's look at some of the issues with the kind of the existential problems that cause us to have, some of the existential misunderstandings that cause us to have mental and emotional well-being issues. We feel like we're small and insignificant. Well, small is a size, and size is a measurement that has been created by the mind. Once we switch the mind off, there's no such thing as size, and this idea of being small is ridiculous. You are not small in a big universe, because there's no such thing as small, there's no such thing as big. These are concepts. There is no such thing. And size, anyway, in any event, even if there was such a thing as size has nothing to do with significance. You hear it all the time, particularly from very scientifically minded individuals when they're trying to kind of reaffirm their own nihilistic worldview and saying that, well, we're just tiny little specks of dust on a rock in a vast, incomprehensibly huge universe, and we only exist for a brief flash of time, and the whole thing's pointless and miserable, and we are just utterly, completely insignificant. You hear it all the time, and it's all utterly ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. There's no such thing as small, there's no such thing as big, there's no such thing as vast, and there's no such thing as time. So this bizarre insistence that we are somehow tiny and insignificant is pathologically self-damaging. Why do we do that to ourselves? Well, partly I think it's because people want to reaffirm their own nihilistic worldview, because that gives them an excuse for immoral behaviour. That's pretty much as far as I'm going to go on that one. That explains that. So, well, where does that leave us? So you would think, okay, so if I don't feel like I'm small in a big universe, why don't I suddenly expand to the size of a gigantic universe? Because there's no such thing as gigantic. And really, there's no such thing as the universe either, really. But because that's also a concept. The point is, once the mind is out of the way, and we've done away with all of these measurements, divisions, and categorizations, What are you left with? What's underneath all of that? What's left after that? Well, it's just what is. You're left with just what is. You are fully at peace. There's no more psychological turmoil, because there's no more any mind to create psychological turmoil. You're just at peace, and you're just at one with the root and ground of being. And this is why so many spiritual practices and traditions talk about the state of no mind and achieving no mind. Once you're there, that really is it. That's inner peace. And some of the most incredible, divine, profound revelations come to you when the mind is absent. Why is that? Because with the mind absent, you are now free to perceive truth. That's why meditation often leads to incredible intuition and incredible creative insight. You are just seeing reality clearly. Because we made the mistake of thinking reality is something that we need to understand on a cognitive level, and didn't realize the dreadful mistake that we were making there, in that the cognitive level is the absolute worst tool for understanding reality. You couldn't design a worse tool. Oh dear. Oh dear. But the mind is arrogant. It's the monkey manager. It's the monkey that got promoted to CEO of planet Earth. That's what the mind is. And it cannot help but continue. It will just keep doing its own nature. So in Advaita, what we need to do is recognize our non-separate nature. And there are various practices for silencing the mind. And that's what I would recommend doing. Silence the mind. Because once the mind is silent, there's no more measurement. There's no more categorization. And because there's no division, all of the lines just disappear. There's no longer an inside and outside world. There's no longer a big universe around you. You just realize, oh. I mean, in the early days, you will say, well, I have rejoined reality. I feel like I am part of the universe again. But eventually you realize, I am that. I am the universe. Which is baffling. It sounds unbelievably narcissistic, really, to say I am the universe. But once the mind is out the way, you realize it's not narcissistic. It's actually very humble. You just let go. You let go of your delusional belief that you can control reality and understand reality. You can't. Just let go. This provides a very deep and powerful sense of meaning, because you suddenly recognize that every single thing that you perceive is not separate from you. And this, the amount of, I will use the word love. Love is what develops there. You feel a deep sense of love for everything. Everything. Because that's what love is. Love is the recognition of shared being. Not even shared even implies that there's two separate things. It's just the recognition of the unity of being. That's a better way of phrasing it. Love is the recognition of the unity of being. My being, your being, listening to this, the seagull outside, the trees, the building that I'm sat in, the coffee can that I keep sipping from. All is one. All is one. Nothing is happening outside of the one unified whole. Unity. Advaita could even be translated to just mean unity, one. It just means one. There is one thing. It is not possible to lack meaning when you have awoken to that realization. The meaning was staring you in the face the entire time. And as for purpose, well, that was the purpose. That was the purpose of this entire dream. The dream was there to wake up from. and to realize the unity of all things. The dream of separation, that previous deluded way of looking at the world, was it necessary? Well, I don't know. And I don't care to know either. I just know that it happened. The purpose of all of that struggle, striving, and strife, the ups and downs, the turmoil, the suffering, the whole thing, was to arrive at this point. That's it. This is the end of the road. It's the end of the road because there's no more individual ego that's going to be present from that point onwards. That's it. The meaning there is found and experienced fully. Fully. You have felt it for yourself. This does away with the endless questioning in the mind, what's it all worth, what's it all for? And we have to answer that question, because as you go through your daily life, which can feel so stressful, tiresome, and mundane, you will suffer. You do suffer in your daily life, and never discount the intensity of that suffering. If you're suffering, you're suffering. And whenever we suffer, we naturally go to, what is the point of this? What's the point of all this turmoil? What's the point of all this hardship? But if on your deepest, most fundamental level, you realize the unity of all things, you realize that, well, there is a point to all this. And you start to realize, well, I don't mind, actually. I don't mind working, because I can see the unity of all things. I don't mind the efforts and the struggles and the striving that I go through. And why don't I mind that? Because I know that all is one, that this is all for the greater good. This all serves one singular, much greater whole. So even when, yes, I'm stressed out and annoyed because my manager's emailing me and he's just a nightmare, when I'm stuck in traffic, when the kids are doing my head in, when your health keeps failing, when you're going through all of this trouble, suddenly the meaning is ever present there. You realize what's happening. It's all part of a much greater, broader organism. This also helps us to find some peace with when we look at the state of the world and the state of humanity. If you just keep zooming the picture out, just keep zooming out, zooming out, zooming out, even all of the conflicts, all of the and I know how dark it gets, okay? I know, I'm not discounting it or invalidating it. I know how bad it gets. But the more you zoom the picture out, the more you see that there is a strange kind of harmony to all of this, a balance that we're not capable of perceiving from our limited perspectives. The balance can only be perceived from a much more elevated perspective. In the same way that if we were to observe a lion eating a gazelle, we can see that it's just the nature, the cycles of life unfolding. But the gazelle would be thinking, this is horrific, this is awful, this is the worst thing imaginable. And why is that person over there staring at this and not helping? Because the person over there staring at this knows this is nature. This is part of the natural order of things. When you can elevate your observation to the point to observe the entire planet in that exact way, you realize, oh, I see. It's like, yes, this is, humanity's working a lot of things out right now. That's what's happening. And when you find the meaning in that, you realize, oh, I see. This is part of something much greater than just myself. Something much greater than just this individual temporary body and mind. Perspective. It puts everything into perspective. There's a great deal of peace in that. And naturally, it doesn't make things any easier for you when you've got bills to pay and things to do, and you've got arguments and conflicts going on and less than desirable situations and circumstances. Of course, you're still going to be experiencing the difficulty of that. But if you can experience that from the perspective of the unified whole, rather than from the perspective of the separate individual, well, the trouble is still there, even the pain is still there, but the suffering has ceased. You're no longer separate from this universe. I think that'll wrap up today's podcast, team. Thanks so much for listening. Hope that's given a fairly basic understanding of Advaita. In the next episode, we're going to do a very deep dive into something called shadow work, which is where we come into face-to-face contact with some of the deepest, darkest, repressed emotions that we have been avoiding for so long. And as we come to find, it is the mind that buries these emotions as a method of protecting itself. That's what we'll look at next time. Thank you so much for listening, team. Appreciate every single one of you. Hope this podcast finds you well today. Take care, be well, and stay present.